Good morning to you, Garfield, and good morning to all our viewers and listeners, and those of us who are joining via our sister radio stations. Uh, Good to be with you this morning again to speak about the work of the Cabinet of Prime Minister Gaston Brown. It was a lengthy session on Wednesday, and as per usual, and which is of a great joy to the members of Cabinet, is always the commencement of the session with the meditation from a visiting pastor. The visiting pastor came from the Methodist Church this week, and she based her meditation on Proverbs chapter 8, verses 8 to 17. The pastor delivered a thoughtful meditation to the Cabinet, emphasizing the central role of wisdom, righteousness, and integrity in leadership. The passage highlights that wisdom speaks truth, rejects wickedness, and guides those in authority toward justice and sound judgment, principles that are essential for national justice and governance. In her reflection, the pastor encouraged cabinet members to continually seek wisdom in all their decisions, noting that true leadership is grounded not only in knowledge, but in moral discernment and a reverence to what is right. She reminded them that wisdom leads to fairness, strengthens institutions, and fosters trust among the people. The pastor expressed sincere gratitude to the Cabinet for their hard work and ongoing commitment to the people of Antigua and Barbuda. She acknowledged that their responsibilities can often feel thankless, yet affirmed that their service is both seen and appreciated by the public. Their efforts, she noted, contribute significantly to the stability and development of Antigua and Barbuda. In closing, the pastor reaffirmed that a steadfast pursuit of wisdom, coupled with integrity and humility, will guide the Cabinet in fulfilling their duties effectively and in service to the people of Antigua and Barbuda. Well, the Cabinet, chaired by Prime Minister the Honorable Gaston Brown, approved a 5% increase in payments to pensioners this week. Last week, you would have heard that it was a 5% increase to all public servants. Now, this week, it's a 5% increase to government pensioners, extending the government's ongoing efforts to provide financial relief and improve the standard of living for all of its citizens. The decision, as I mentioned earlier, followed last week's decision, and the Cabinet agreed to broaden the scope of this increase right across the public service to include individuals participating in the government's work experience program, along with contract workers. So in addition to the public servants, last week there are some sectors of workers who were excluded based on certain regulations and so forth. This week, the Cabinet not only agreed to expand that 5% to include those contract workers, persons on the government work scheme, and a few others, but also the 5% increase to go to pensioners. The government remains committed to ensuring that it improves the welfare of its people through prudent economic management and people-centered policies. These measures form part of a broader strategy that is to strengthen social protection systems and promote inclusive growth across the nation. And of course, keeping in mind what is happening internationally that is affecting us here within the region. The Cabinet also acknowledged the urgent need to address the high cost of air travel between Antigua and Barbuda. Following a presentation, the newly appointed caretaker for Barbuda, on behalf of the Antigua and Barbuda Labour Party, the young Kendra Biza, made a presentation to the cabinet. Mr. Biza's presentation highlighted the growing financial burden faced by residents on Barbuda and also travelers due to increased airfare cost on the Antigua Barbuda route. Recent developments have seen significant fare increases, with limited transportation alternatives contributing to the challenge and impacting both residents and the economy there on Barbuda. In response, Cabinet agreed that the matter requires immediate attention and meaningful intervention. So more members recognize that affordable and reliable air transportation between the sister islands is essential for economic activity, access to health care, and other well-being, the overall well-being of Barbudans. And so Cabinet, therefore, given an undertaking to approve a subsidy aimed at reducing airfare costs between Antigua and Barbuda. This initiative is expected to provide much-needed relief to the travelers and residents on Barbuda and ensure greater accessibility and also mobility. Mr. Biza, Kendra Biza, has been advised to prepare and submit a detailed proposal outlining the structure and implementation of the proposed subsidy. The submission will be reviewed by Cabinet next week, where a final determination on the quantum, the amount of the said subsidy. The government of Antigua and Barbuda says that it remains committed to ensuring equitable access to transportation and to addressing the concerns of all citizens, particularly those in Barbuda who depend heavily on affordable travel between the islands. The Cabinet also, on Wednesday during its sitting, received and approved a comprehensive update from the Treasury Department on the status of retroactive salary payments owed to public servants for the period 2018 to 2023. The presentation outlines significant progress made to date with key disbursement figures, eligibility criteria, and measures being implemented by the Treasury Department to complete all outstanding payments. So as of January of this year, a total of $28.7 million has been disbursed to eligible public servants. This includes established workers receiving about $12.5 million, non-established employers 9.8 million, weekly paid workers 3.8 million, pensioners receiving 2.5 million, and separated employees $43,166. These payments, of course, reflects government's continued commitment to settling the outstanding obligations in a structured and transparent manner. Now, there have been a number of individuals who have been excluded from this retroactive payment, parliamentarians and ministers, judges, persons in the work program, contract officers, and so on. There have also been individuals who have been complaining that they have not received their retroactive pay. And in addressing this issue, the Treasury Department has decided that it is going to implement a help desk at the Treasury that will accommodate persons' queries, so a specific department there at the Treasury to accommodate persons' queries on what they may deem as being outstanding retroactive payment. Public servants, therefore, are encouraged to utilize this help desk and ensure that records are accurate and up to date to facilitate timely payments. The government has set a target to complete all outstanding retroactive payments by the end of this month, March. Cabinet reaffirmed and says that it is committed to ensuring that all eligible public servants receive their due payments in a fair and timely manner. Now, also, the Cabinet approved a presentation by the Treasury Department within the Ministry of Finance outlining its current restructuring strategy, and this strategy is aimed at strengthening financial management, oversight, and accountability across government ministries. The presentation detailed the Treasury Department's initiative to deploy accounting officers to key ministries under a pilot program scheduled to commence during the second quarter of this year. The initiative is designed to strengthen financial oversight within ministries, improve real-time expenditure monitoring, enhance commitment controls, and build some financial management capacity at the ministry level with direct support from the Treasury. Now, for this pilot program, 3 ministries have been selected where accounting officers will be deployed: the Ministry of Public Works, the Ministry of Creative Industries, and the Ministry of National Security. These ministries were selected based on their expenditure levels and also infrastructure programs and the need for enhanced financial control frameworks, so to shore up these departments. And so these officers will be going to these ministries to assist them, particularly in their accounts department. The Cabinet also on Wednesday approved a landmark proposal for the establishment of the country's first comprehensive national cardiology center, marking a major advancement in the nation's healthcare system. The proposal, submitted by internationally recognized cardiologist Professor Jingwei Zhang, through the Minister for Health, the Honorable Sir Malwin Joseph, he outlined the strategies and what this partnership will aim at delivering world-class cardiac care here in Antigua and Barbuda. The initiatives build on a successful 2-year collaboration between the Hangzhou Normal University and the Antigua and Barbuda Ministry of Health, along with the Mount St. John Medical Center. The primary objective is to eliminate the need for citizens to travel overseas for life-saving cardiac procedures by providing advanced interventional cardiology services within Antigua and Barbuda. The center will introduce cutting-edge diagnostic and surgical capabilities, significantly improving access to specialized care. The facility is expected to handle complex cardiovascular conditions, including coronary artery disease, heart failure, and arrhythmias. Professor Zhang, who currently serves as president of the affiliated hospital of Hangzhou Normal University in China and director of its Institute of Cardiovascular Diseases, will lead this initiative here in Antigua and Barbuda. With the extensive experience in over 20,000 precortinous coronary interventions and pioneering work in cardiac care systems, he brings a wealth of experience to the project here in Antigua and Barbuda. And of course, we will release more information on this historic move by the Cabinet of Antigua and Barbuda to establish a national cardiology center located at the Mount St. John Medical Center. The government of Antigua and Barbuda has entered into a contractual agreement with the Chinese firm, China Civil Engineering Construction Corporation, that's the CCE-CCC, and this is for the repaving of the North Sound racetrack, with the primary objective of significantly improving safety at that facility. Now, the North Sound drag racing track, located east of the Sir Vivian Richards Stadium, has grown in popularity over the years, attracting thousands of racing enthusiasts and families and spectators who utilize the venue as key recreational space. Now, recognizing both its national importance and increasing usage, Cabinet has prioritized the rehabilitation of the track to ensure it meets modern safety standards. The project will include resurfacing work and installation of enhanced safety features designed to better protect drivers and spectators alike. The Cabinet on Wednesday also approved the establishment of a rent-to-own program for the condominium units being constructed under the Booby Alley housing project. This marks a significant step towards expanding access to home ownership for citizens of Antigua and Barbuda. The Booby Alley housing project, located in the historic Point community, is a transformative urban renewal initiative funded through a grant from the government of the People's Republic of China. The development there at Booby Alley will deliver some 150 modern, climate-resilient condominium units, replacing substandard housing and improving the living conditions of hundreds of residents. Now, how will this work? Cabinet's decision to implement the rent-to-own model, and this will be for remaining units. Of the 150 units, there are individuals who would have lived there in that community. They have first preference for the units, and so it's an exchange for them. The remaining units now, persons who are desirous of occupying those units after the exchanges would have taken place for persons who once lived in the Booby Alley area, the remaining units will be available to persons on the rent-to-own basis. And so that is how that program will be structured. This approach aligns with government's broader objective of improving citizens, particularly those from vulnerable communities, through sustainable housing solutions. The Booby Alley development forms a central pillar of the government's wider housing and urban renewal agenda, which seeks to eliminate inadequate housing conditions and uplift communities across Antigua and Barbuda. And as you know, the government has catapulted its housing program across Antigua and Barbuda. In almost every community, homes are being built by the Gaston Brown administration, affordable homes for individuals to own their own home. Now, there is also another effort by the government that involves home development. And so yesterday the Cabinet approved a recommendation by the Housing Minister, the Honorable Maria Brown, for the termination of a lease agreement between Mr. Maxwell Randolph Henry and the government of Antigua and Barbuda for lands located in Sutherlands. Now, these lands, approximately 13.7 acres, currently occupied in part by the Clearview Mental Hospital and several informal housing settlements in that area. Now, Cabinet's decision is taken in context of the government's strategic housing and national development objectives, which have identified a number of areas for redevelopment into a structured low-income housing community and for the regularization of existing settlements. The Cabinet directed the Honorable Minister to proceed with planning and executing a comprehensive housing development project on that site. And so this project to be implemented by the Honorable Minister in the Sutherlands area, or the registered section in her constituency, Sutherland's registration, but most persons will say Skerritt's pasture, etc. The construction of affordable housing units for low-income families, the regularization of existing informal settlements there to provide security of tenure, and also the integration of community facilities and supporting infrastructure to promote sustainable community development. Cabinet has also mandated an interministerial coordination between the Ministry of Housing and the Ministry of Health, and that is regarding the relocation and accommodation arrangements for the Clearview Mental Hospital. As you know, there was a new facility, or another facility, that is earmarked for the Clearview Hospital in the Seaview Farm community, and so coordination will be made to have a smooth transition from the current location in Sutherlands to Seaview Farm of members of or patients of that hospital. The Cabinet approved a series of initiatives aimed at preserving the nation's pottery in Seaview Farm, while strengthening cultural tourism and supporting the sustainability of traditional pottery production, following a presentation by the Honorable Anthony Smith. This decision follows a formal proposal submitted by Mrs. Sharon Burnett, granddaughter of Miss Hyacinth Hillhouse, the country's only living traditional potter and the matriarch of the historic Elvie's pottery. The proposal outlined the cultural significance of the pottery tradition, the operational challenges associated with clay processing and kiln firing, and the need for national support to preserve this important part of Antigua and Barbuda's heritage. Cabinet recognized Seaview Farm as the home of one of the Caribbean's oldest surviving pottery traditions, a little over 100 years, with techniques and craftsmanship passed down through generations for more than a century. And so what Cabinet has done, Cabinet has agreed to assign 3 individuals under the Work Experience Program to be attached to the pottery in Seaview Farm to undergo training in the traditional craft of pottery. In addition, the Ministry of Tourism will enter into a collaboration with this business place, or this pottery company in Seaview Farm for facilitating the production and supply of authentic pottery artifacts. Now, these items will be used as official gift items and will form part of the country's cultural tourism product. The Cabinet of Antigua and Barbuda approved a proposed a proposal presented by the Minister for Foreign Affairs, the Honorable E.P. Chet Green, for the appointment of internationally recognized Jamaican recording artist, Massacre, formerly known as Javon Nicholas Ferron, as cultural ambassador for youth talent development and creative industries collaboration. So the initiative forms part of the government's national strategy to expand the creative industry sector, strengthening youth development programs and enhance cultural diplomacy across Antigua and Barbuda. So under this program with Massacre, Jamaican famed, 3 young Antiguan and Barbudan artists will be selected to participate in a Jamaica-based artist development exchange program. The program will include professional studio training, songwriting development, vocal coaching, performance preparation, exposure to music producers and record labels, touring observation opportunities, and entrepreneurial development training. The initiative also includes a national youth music intervention and mentorship program. Massacre will also host a National Youth Creative Empowerment Forum series featuring interactive youth dialogue. So this is some good news for members in the creative industry here in Antigua and Barbuda. In related developments, the cabinet also appointed internationally acclaimed Warri players Trevor Simon and Terence Kambui Charles as cultural ambassadors in recognition of their outstanding contribution to the preservation and promotion of the traditional game of Warri. Cabinet commended both men for their unwavering commitment and dedication to the development of Warri, a historical and culturally significant game deeply rooted in African heritage and widely regarded as one of the oldest strategy games in the world. The appointment acknowledged the pivotal role by both Mr. Simon and Mr. Charles in advancing the sports locally, regionally, and internationally, as well as their continued effort to ensure its transmission to members of the young generation. And so those are some of the items that were discussed and addressed by the Cabinet of Antigua and Barbuda at its sitting on Wednesday. Now, Garfield, it's over to you.
Thanks so much, Maurice. Really appreciate it. Maurice Merchant, their Director General for Communications in the Prime Minister's office, giving us a flavor of some of what was discussed and agreed to yesterday as the nation's executive met. So here with us are some of my colleagues. There are 3 of them. Elizabeth Fain from the Point Broadcasting Network, Alicia George from ABS Television Radio, and there is Robert Emmanuel from Antigua.news. So let's start this morning with actually from my far right to my near right. So let's start with Robert this morning. I'll actually just divert a little bit from ladies before gentlemen. Chivalry is not dead, though. Robert Emmanuel, good morning to you. Over to you.
I was fully expecting the chivalry to continue. But regardless, so good morning, Mr. Merchant. My first question is related to point 2 of the notes. I would just like to get a sense. Has the Cabinet discussed with LIAT or with SVG Air? I believe they were the sole operating flight currently in Barbuda, over some of its concerns, over some of its the high cost of airfare that Mr. Beezer talked about. According to one article, SVG Air has been dealing with pilot availability, maintenance concerns. What are some of the? I know you said that he's not gone into detail in the notes, but what are some of the ideas that are being bandied about by Cabinet?
Well, Cabinet doesn't want to preempt the discussion on this issue, and so Mr. Beezer will come with a full detailed proposal. There were some concerns that were obviously discussed yesterday at the Cabinet on the matter. Some of the concerns of members of the Cabinet, members of Mr. Beezer and his team, and also some suggestions were brought forward, and one of the suggestions that were brought forward we released today, and that is government providing a subsidy to cushion the cost of air travel between Antigua and Barbuda. And as you know, the cost is predicated by a number of factors. As you mentioned, some of them, it could be problems with the aircraft, it could be staffing, it could be the price of fuel, and so forth. All these affect the cost of traveling between Antigua and Barbuda, and providing subsidy for air travel is nothing new to the industry. Governments do that from time to time to cushion the cost for its travelers, and also to encourage increased travel. If you know that you are getting reduced fares for travel, you are more persuaded to travel on most occasions. Most of us, if we want to go to North America during the peak periods when the fares are very high, we try to stay away. But when the fares go down and there's special benefits, we clamor to take those flights and to travel. And so it's the same effects the government expects to happen between Antigua and Barbuda. And as you know, Barbuda has been growing by leaps and bounds under the Gaston Brown administration, with all of the developments that's taking place there and all of the plans that are in place for Barbuda being soon to be an international hub. Or already an international hub. During the recent winter break, you will be amazed at the private jets that were in Barbuda, and the large number of yachts that docked on Barbuda to enjoy the uniqueness of that sister island.
Noted. Moving to note 4, could you just explain how long would this pilot program of deploying accounting officers to key ministries, how long would that last? And what are some of the particular outcomes the government is looking for before it expands?
Okay, so persons have been complaining, the general public has been complaining that, and sure, having worked at a radio station and call-in programs, you would heard that persons are saying that they've been to the Treasury and there is nothing there, no payment and so forth. And a lot of the times it's because there is a backlog of work being sent to the Treasury, documents being processed by ministries to the Treasury. And so in order to shore up the production and the efficiency of these ministries, government has decided that let us put some persons who are affiliated with the Treasury, who know the process and who can give guidance in terms of quickly dealing with matters of government, who are familiar with the Financial Administration Act and what are required in the processing of certain financial arrangements between government and the Treasury, or individuals and the Treasury. And so this pilot project, 3 ministries were selected, and it's because of the volume of work that these ministries engaging. Creative industries, for example, it has all these festivals that it manages, and so its load of preparation in terms of documents. So the Treasury will take its accounting officers into that division and provide an input into how you can improve on this service to the general public. And the government intends this to be across the system after this pilot project. And so intermittently you will have reports being presented to Cabinet on how this pilot project is working in these 3 selected ministries.
Is there any plans to increase or rather look for or no, boost employment in terms of getting more persons that can deal with financial matters, so that way, as this pilot program is ongoing, there's also training within the ministries of their financial officers or whoever is
Okay.
guiding on those financial matters.
One of the remit is to strengthen the financial capability of these departments, or modernize these departments to meet the current demands. And so, if one of the recommendation is for increase in staffing, then that will be made. And so this team that will be moving into these ministries will also have that responsibility to advise on how feasible certain steps being taken by the Treasury Department, the Ministry of Finance, are towards the improvement of the operations of these ministries.
And just jumping back to point 3 of the notes, how does a note that the government says that it hopes to complete outstanding retroactive payments by the end of this month, which is, according to my time, would be
A few more days to go.
yes, exactly.
About 3-4 days.
Yeah. So, but you also note there's some challenges, data gaps for separated employees and pensioners, high query volumes due to incorrect and incomplete submissions, and so on and so forth. How confident is the government that it will be able to complete its target while these challenges are affecting its work?
Yeah, while there are deadlines, it's not etched in stone. Government has a responsibility to meet its obligations to employees and past employees, and where the retroactive payments are, some sort of deadline must be set. There must be a cutoff period, or else you will have trickles of individuals coming in throughout the entire year talking about retroactive payments. And so a deadline is set so that persons who have not received for one reason or another can address the problem. And so the end of this month has been chosen. It does not mean that if after this deadline that you go, that you'll be turned away, but there must be a period whereby there needs to be some finality to the program of retroactive payment. And there are, as I mentioned, some challenges, but with this help desk that has been established, these challenges are expected to be addressed.
And I note that the Treasury officials are looking at introducing a mandatory periodic banking information review. How periodic is the Treasury looking at? Is it a 1 year review, or is this going to be like a 5-year review of banking information, or 2-year review?
That was not discussed, but I have a feeling that it will move from whatever the current status quo is to improving on it. So if it is now yearly, then it will become twice yearly. Or as you mentioned, if it is a 5-year review, then it will be reduced to probably 3.5 or 2-year review. But it's definitely to improve on getting information and to remaining modernized.
This is a lot of notes, by the way. Point 5 of the notes speaks to the National Cardiology Center. I fail to note where exactly this is going to be housed. Is this at
I did mention that the aim is to have it housed at the Mount St. John Medical Center, where all of the amenities associated with providing healthcare to individuals are located.
I probably missed that. But regardless, is there any subsidies, and that's not the right word I'm looking for, but subsidies given to the Professor Zhang and his team to sort of import some of these products, essential services? What sort of...
I'm sure that, as with all contractual arrangements, there must be some numeration package, and that, of course, will be ironed out as the program is unveiled and comes to a realization at the Mount St. John Medical Center.
And my final question goes to point 8. The note about the termination of a lease in favor of Mr. Henry. Could you just explain why the government felt it was necessary to broadcast this? And was there any sort of issue in terms of negotiations
No
with Mr. Henry?
issues, no issues whatsoever, but it was a matter that because it is going to provide significant housing to the people of Antigua and Barbuda, then it is necessary for government to alert the public as to what it is doing in relation to that area within that community. There is no new news that the Clearview will be relocated, and certain steps have got to be taken to do so. After relocation, does the government leave the property there abandoned, or does it utilize it for additional services to the people? Housing is still a much needed a need for Antiguans and Barbudans, and hence the minister brought the proposal that this land, why not transform it into a housing development? And in that community in particular, there is a limited land space available for housing development, and there is the need for housing in that community. Unlike other communities, that community has not received housing development due to the unavailability of Crown land. And so this opportunity comes to fore, and the Honourable Minister is jumping at it to provide housing for members of that community.
Thank you.
And thank you too as well, Robert. Robert Emmanuel is a reporter at Antigua.news. Let's go on to Robert's left, and Alicia George is a senior reporter producer at the national broadcaster ABS Television Radio. Good morning, Alicia. Your questions, please.
Sure, thank you. Good morning. The government announced last week cost of living relief measures, and this week we hear the 5% increase to pensioners by the end of April. How is the government funding these short-term increases, and how does it plan to sustain it in the long term?
I don't know what you mean by short-term increases. All of these increases...
Immediate, I should say.
Okay. All of these increases were announced in the Prime Minister's budget presented, and I think I did mention that last week. You asked that question in another form. But the Prime Minister did make mention, this is no new news to us Antiguans and Barbudans. We know that the increases were coming. They have come now. And government is confident. And the Ministry of Finance was at the Cabinet yesterday. Almost the entire top echelon of finance was there. And they have indicated to the Cabinet that they are confident that based upon projections for Antigua and Barbuda's growth under the Gaston Brown administration, that funding will be achieved for these measures that were announced in December when Prime Minister Brown presented the 2026 budget.
So budgetary allocations were made for that? Yes.
I'm sure you have another question.
Budgetary allocations. The next question, Cabinet said that it was already looking at the issue on Barbuda regarding flights. Is the subsidy the result of its own plan, and if so, will the proposal that BISA will be looking at, will it be an alternative, or will there be a merging of solutions?
As I mentioned earlier, there are a number of suggestions that were put on the table, one of them being the subsidy, which would provide immediate relief to the people of Barbuda. Mr. BISA will make his presentation to the Cabinet next week, and then a final determination will be made on the quantum of that subsidy that will be provided to ensure that Barbudans can travel affordably between both islands.
Right. In relation to point 7 on the Gubi Alley development, I want to ask how much rent will be, but what factors will determine how much rent will be?
Of course, there is a management team that is in place. They will look at the trend on what rent is in Antigua and Barbuda, market value. All of these considerations will be taken into play before an affordable rate is arrived at for the rent to own. Remember, the aim is to ensure that an individual can afford to own their own home. And so they will not try to price anyone out of the market. Once you meet specific criteria, just as you will be required to meet specific criteria for a loan from any one of the commercial banks for a home, then this will be implemented at an affordable level to ensure that persons of that that social standing can afford to own their own home within one of the most modern condominium units in Antigua and Barbuda.
The management group that you speak of, is it expected that they will be in charge of the operations or managing the operations at Booby Alley indefinitely? And if so, does it include or has there been discussions about how that development will be sustained? And by that I mean the upkeep.
Coming close to the opening of that facility, which is anticipated, if I'm not mistaken, I think by October or November of this year, then details of how the project will be managed. It will be, in a lot of instances, a new phenomenon for most Antiguans and Barbudans in such a condominium type living conditions, and so detailed announcements will be made and how everything will be structured in terms of the management of the facility. All of us are familiar with the conditions of that area previously, and hence the government does not want to return to a situation like that. And hence management will play a significant role in the operations there at Booby Alley.
Does the government have an idea of how many empty spaces there might be?
Not at this moment.
Right. And I assume the empty spaces on the basis of maybe first come, first serve, that as well will be included in the discussion later on with the management group.
Of course. Government has an idea of the number of individuals who will be on the exchange program, persons who owned homes in that area who have first preference in terms of the units there. And government has an idea because there was a structured movement of individuals out of the area, and serious documentation is in place for persons who once lived there. And so they will have first preference. Those numbers are not available to me at this time. And then the remaining units, as I mentioned, will be on a rent-to-own basis.
Thank you.
Thank you too as well, Alicia. Alicia George is senior reporter producer at ABS Television Radio. Let's go over to Elizabeth Thane. Elizabeth is a reporter with the Point Broadcasting Network, PBN. Good morning to you, Elizabeth. Your questions, please.
Good morning, Garfield. Good morning, Maurice. With respect to the 5% pension and salary increases, did any of the discussions center around individuals who are on the job programs or who are contract workers to be included in these increases in any way?
It's outlined in the notes that last week when we announced the 5% increase on the salary, there were individuals that were not included, and so government decided this week to broaden that scope of individuals who are eligible, and some of the individuals who are now eligible as of this week are contract workers and persons on the government's work scheme.
Awesome. Okay, as it pertains to the transportation to and from Antigua and Barbuda, I know that the notes specified air travel. Was ferry service at all discussed?
Ferry service was not the main agenda item, but general travel was discussed, and so if ferry travel and air travel require some form of assistance for Barbudans to travel, then government will address that concern.
And was emergency airlift discussed at all?
No,
No?
not at all.
Okay. All right. Will the Treasury restructuring lead to greater autonomy for ministries or an increased central oversight for the Treasury?
The Treasury believes that it has looked at some of its challenges, and it believes that it can play a role in making the work of government more effective, because we know that there have been concerns expressed by members of the public of the operations of certain government ministries and so forth, and it's always highlighted on social media of this department that, and that department functions at a minimal level and so forth. And so in the effort to improve on the service provided by government to the general public, the Treasury believes that it can play a part, and it has decided that it will start with the operations within the accounts department, which is the overall remit of the Treasury to fund government services. And so if it translates into other areas of government's efficiency, then they would have started and achieved a significant goal in Antigua and Barbuda's development.
Okay. And finally, Maurice, it wasn't a part of the notes, but we cannot ignore the big announcement that was made by the Prime Minister last week about general elections being within the next 90 days. Are there any comments or anything that you, updates that you can share with the public?
As we all know, the Prime Minister is the one who holds the key to that particular door, and only him alone can open that door. There was no discussion on when or how, other than within 90 days.
Cute. Thank you very much, Director General. Back over to you, Garfield.
Garfield.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it, Elizabeth. Elizabeth prying for a little bit more of a hint there. We'll see how that one pans out. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, and to my colleagues, Alicia and Robert. Maurice, just a few quick things. Just before I continue, Robert, you were robbed the question last week because we ran out of time. Do you want to? You have actually one more question if you want to. I did promise, because
Yes,
we
but
actually had to run to
yeah.
the official funeral last week.
You're being very generous.
I kind of I didn't walk with my last week notes, so unfortunately I can't remember that particular question. So
Okay, all right. So you forfeit the right to your bonus question. All right. Thank you so much, Robert. Maurice, in relation to point 6 on the notes, China
Yes.
Civil Engineering Construction Corporation getting the contract for the repaving of the North Sound racetrack. When is that expected to happen? What's the quantum of the contract?
Public Works is currently working out the modalities, and so they expect to see some work starting within 2 to 3 weeks once arrangements have been made with the racing fraternity on when is the appropriate time. But Public Works says that once it has completed all of the necessary paperwork, it will be rearing and ready to go with the CCECC, and it's just for the racing fraternity management to say we are ready, and then work will commence.
Okay, so we'll monitor that one as well. Point 7 on the note speaks about the establishment of a rent-to-own program. You indicated that this is it's a kind of bifurcation or bifurcated agreement because there are individuals who would be moving into their homes on an exchange basis, meaning they had been living there
Yes.
and they'll be therefore getting to return.
Right.
How many of these how many units will be left after individuals get the exchange, and therefore how many units will be available for this rent-to-own agreement?
I think you're repeating Alyssa's question, where I indicated that at this time we do not know numbers. There are numbers, but I am not privy to those numbers at this time. And we must make it very clear, because we know that we are in a particular season where things get wrapped around poles and transformed into to all sorts of different things. Government is not instituting a rent-to-own for the entire Booby Alley project. There will be exchanges. Persons who lived in Booby Alley before, who have been asked to vacate, to facilitate the construction of the condominiums, they will be receiving their units as promised by the Gaston Brown administration. And I'm sure during your news presentation you will be providing video footage of the magnificent structures erected there by our good friends from the People's Republic of China. And so exchanges will be done. Persons will receive their units as promised. And the remaining units, government says, rent to own. We are giving you the opportunity to own a unit within those condominiums at affordable rates, to ensure that more individuals can say that they own a property in Antigua and Barbuda.
Okay, good, excellent. So we'll certainly speak with the management team there to get those numbers. In relation to the Treasury appointing on a pilot basis these accounting officers, Maurice, was there a timeline for when that pilot program will begin? The second quarter, yes, my bad. The second quarter of this year. Three ministries first. What's the timeline for expanding it to all the other ministries?
I think they indicated that they will be going by quarters, and so for the first 3 months they will see how things operate. And once they have reached an effective level of creating some semblance of change and balance within the system, then other ministries will come on board.
And the permanent secretaries, who are essentially the chief accounting officers of their respective ministries, the permanent secretaries have been fully briefed and are fully aware of what is entailed, and the fact that these accounting officers will have, in relation to certainly accounting financial matters, they seem to have the preeminence in relation to the decision making.
Yes, of course. The Treasury communicates on a regular basis with heads of departments, including the permanent secretaries. And so they first will be brought up to speed on what the objectives are of this program, and then the officers from the Treasury, the accounting officers from the Treasury, will then move into these departments to assist them in modernizing and bringing their accounting systems up to speed.
A final matter on the Treasury, before I move on to my final question, Maurice. Dr. James Knight wrote recently that he was subjected to significant inconvenience for contractual work that he did for the government. And this was while he worked in the Ministry of Tourism. And he thinks that he puts it at the feet of the Treasury and thinks that there is bungling in the Treasury, that one person doesn't know what the other knows and the systems are all amok. Did the Treasury officials who went to Cabinet yesterday, did they explain whether or not they have tried to increase the efficiency of their own operations to ensure that when information goes there, that there is it leads to the outcomes that are desired, so that individuals get what is due to them.
That particular matter was not discussed. There are systems in place at the Treasury. There are procedures that must be taken by departments to ensure that service providers to the government received payments for the service that they provide. Sometimes there is a breakdown in communications, and procedures are not followed. But it always starts at the ministry level, from the department that benefits from the service that has been provided. In many cases, we see that departments will produce their documentation for payment, and then it stops there, goes into the Treasury and stops there. There is a problem with follow-through. If I know that I have solicited the services of someone, I prepare documentation for payment for that individual. I think it is cognizant upon you or I to follow through and ensure that payment is received. Remember, the Treasury Department deals with the entire government system, and it is impossible to pay every single individual within the government system at one time. And so if departments, and this is why the accounts folks from the Treasury will be going into the ministries, if there is a plan or a strategy by departments to how they operate with the Treasury, then most of these problems, as elucidated by the good doctor, can be alleviated. And so follow-through is important. Documentation, ensuring that documentation reaches the Treasury on time, and correct documentation too reaches the Treasury on time. Government has the capacity to pay its service providers. There is no doubt about that. With the economy growing significantly over the years, government has demonstrated that it can pay service providers. I can say that at cabinet level yesterday that the cabinet instructed the Treasury Department that all overtimes should be paid for public works workers. They must be processed on time, and individuals at public works must be, because of the level of service that they are providing to the nation at this time. And it was not an issue of whether or not the money is available. It is there. But the turnaround time and the follow-through and so forth have been challenging in a lot of cases.
Yeah, many slip between the cup and the lips sometimes, Maurice.
Yes.
Let's hope that those issues are addressed.
Haven't heard that in a while.
Yes, indeed. Kind of dating myself. Let's go to a final point from the notes, point 12, which you never got to actually mention, Maurice, but I'll mention it. In relation to the cabinet discussing the dress code for government buildings in this country, one that acknowledges the need for standards, but is also responsive to public concerns about fairness and access. So cabinet says there should be some relaxation of strict prohibitions. So example, overly detailed clothing restrictions, shifting towards common sense guidelines rather than rigid enforcement, and ensuring access to services remaining the priority. So we know that sleeveless, for women, for example, wearing sleeveless into government buildings had been prohibited. Is that now going to be allowed? In other words, what will be the practical results of this review of the dress code policy?
I think what the cabinet is trying to say, where the dress code is concerned, is that you can come to the business dressed in sleeves and still look marvelous. And so why are all these Elizabethan requirements, strict requirements for dress codes being implemented? They're not saying that you are allowed to go into government buildings looking raunchy. But at some point, there must be a period where citizens do not feel marginalized from doing government business, because I have heard of instances whereby persons have been turned back. They would have utilized the bus service to go to do business with the government, but because there are these strict guidelines, these Elizabethan guidelines that you must wear your frock down to your ankles and your head covered and your shoulders not seeing, etc., etc., in this modern day and age, that should not be the case to prevent you from accessing the service of the government of Antigua and Barbuda. So policies must be practical. They must be humane. And in particular, for vulnerable groups, there is nothing wrong in being beautiful, in looking lovely, like coming to do business with the government. You may have your preference of having straps being worn. You may simply ask the individual, can you cover your straps? Do you have something in your car, your vehicle, to just cover your straps a little bit? If you think that it is too revealing for the business that persons are trying to do within government services. But dress must not prohibit individuals from doing business with government. You utilize your intellect. If you think that the person is not dressed appropriately to go into the building at any particular time, then the individuals whom you come to do business with may be able to come to you within the foyer of the government offices. If you cannot go up, maybe they can come down to you, and still the business is transacted. But to have these rigid rules and regulations, there must be some relaxation, Garfield, and a shifting towards some common sense guidelines rather than the rigid enforcement. You are wearing straps, you cannot come in here. Your shorts are too short, you cannot come in here to do business, etc. And in most cases, you know, Garfield, we do not know the person's circumstance. The straps may be the best outfit that that person may have at that time. And so that is what the government is trying to say. And I can tell you it stemmed from a discussion that individuals are saying that they're being turned away from the re-registration process that is ongoing because they are deemed to be inappropriately attired. And so that's what the government is trying to address there.
Yes, address, pun intended. So, pardon the pun. So will there be a new set of guidelines that's been promulgated, or will this be discretionary? Because if it is a discretionary, Maurice, it presents a gray area where the application of those more relaxed rules depends on somebody might be puritanical in their views.
Utilize your common sense. That's all the government
It doesn't. Some person's common sense might be puritanical. So
well,
in other words, they might say, well, it is there's absolutely no straps, and
it's
so on.
up to management to decide that. But the aim must be that some dignity must be maintained. However, the aim is for persons to be able to conduct business with the government at any given time.
Final question, Maurice, not on the notes. CARICOM has indicated that the governments of the region will be providing humanitarian aid to Cuba. Cuba, of course, facing an intense energy crisis because of tightened blockades by the U.S. government. What will Antigua Barbuda's contribution be in relation to that effort? I know that the Cuba Antigua Friendship Association is doing its part as well, but in relation to government's contribution, what has it been?
The discussions was not held in there, but as you know, Antigua and Barbuda values its relationship with with the Republic of Cuba. And so, therefore, whatever means of assistance that Antigua and Barbuda can provide, and the Honorable Minister for Foreign Affairs is in close contact and communication with his fellow OECS and CARICOM colleagues, and he will advise the government on what services Antigua and Barbuda can provide to the people there. And staying on top of that, a member of your team at ABS has been asking questions concerning the status of our students there. We continuously monitor our students. It has been very tough on some of them, but one thing that we have come to know is that whenever our students go to the Republic of Cuba to study, they adopt the resilience of the Cuban people, and so hence they have that determination to continue their studies there in Cuba. There are challenges. On the part of the government, we've tried our best to facilitate certain means of easing their struggles there in Cuba. Not having power for a significant period of time, not having running water for a significant period of time is indeed challenging to anyone. And so rest assured that the government addresses this problem in the most, is addressing this problem in the most serious of way by remaining in contact with our Cuban colleagues to ensure that our students are economically taken care of, and also they are safe and secure, which is most important to all of us. And so there are some contingency plans that are already in place in the event that our students are required to relocate or assistance with any concerns that they may have. We are in close communication with them, and we will continue to do so as this situation develops from time to time.
Maurice, thanks much. Really appreciate it. Back over to you for your closing comments.
Well, just one single matter that is being addressed by the Cabinet. The Cabinet has been made aware that the interpretation of the law on smoking in public places, there are varying interpretations, and the Cabinet, it has been brought to the Cabinet's attention, and hence Cabinet believes that it is required to go back to Parliament to make the law very clear, in particular for officers to interpret, and not for the court system to be bogged down with small matters of smoking in public places. One of the ideas that is being looked at is, and it was announced, if not already in the law, is the ticketing system, similar to the traffic ticketing system for smoking in public places. Many persons think that smoking in public places, as the police are addressing the issue with their varying interpretations, that it applies only to weed smoking, but the individuals have been known to have been approached by the police and dealt with by the police for even cigarette smoking. And so government thinks that it is required to go back to Parliament to make that aspect of smoking very clear, so that there is no differences in interpretation, in particular by law enforcement. Also, Cabinet looked at the whole issue of the basket of goods that will come under the zero rated from the 10th and the 11th of April, particularly addressing food items and school items. And so school items will be deemed as anything that is required by a student to carry out their duties at school: uniforms, books and supplies, clothing, shoes, sandals, whatever is required for use at school, excluding where food is concerned. Non-alcoholic beverages are included, so alcoholic beverages are excluded. Cigarettes and other items in that tobacco region are excluded from that grouping, and so that was discussed at Cabinet last Wednesday or yesterday, as a matter of fact. And so I think that we have covered rather extensively today Cabinet briefing, what Cabinet would have done during its deliberations.
Maurice, sorry to interject. Are you saying that Cabinet is minded towards ticketing rather than arresting for smoking in public?
That's one of the alternatives. Ticketing for a particular purpose, and you ticket and you pay a fine, or it leads to some other forms of punishment. So that is one of the areas that is being looked at, because Garfield, if you go out in public and you just happen to want to smoke for some reason, and then to be hauled before the courts, yeah, that's a bit much.
As reported last night, the first man to be arrested.
Let's say you want to smoke. That's what you say?
As it was the first man who was arrested, he indicated that he was arrested while he and others were discussing that issue. He was smoking while discussing that issue. Let's see how that one pans out. All right, that's it for the post-cabinet media briefing this morning. Let me thank Maurice Merchant, Director General for Communications in the Prime Minister's Office, Elizabeth Finn from Point Broadcasting Network, Alicia George, ABS Television Radio, as well as Robert Emmanuel from Antigua.News. And Robert, you have totally forfeited now your bonus question, so we start from square one next week. That's it for the program. Really appreciate your company on behalf of the entire team here at ABS. Pleasant morning, pleasant viewing.